Welcome to the Brian Buffini Show, where we explore the mindsets, motivation, and methodologies of success. Here's your coach, Brian Buffini.
Well, the top of the morning to you. Welcome to the Brian Buffini Show. Just delighted to be with you. Very excited for you folks because we have a gem of a guest on the show here today. I've been a fan of her long before she was ever even doing this because I've been pals with her dad for about 20 years. Her name is Rachel Cruze. She's a national best-selling author, financial expert, host of the Rachel Cruze Show. She served at Ramsey Solution there since 2010. That's hard to believe. Helping people avoid debt, save money, and learn how to win with the money game at any stage in life. She's written a few books. One she wrote with her dad, which I thought was great, which is Love Your Life, Not Theirs, and Smart Money, Smart Kids, which I thought was fantastic. The Smart Money one has been essential reading for all my family, all 6 of my kids. Her latest book is Know Yourself and Know Your Money. I think this is fabulous, and we're going to dive into that today. Discover why you handle money the way you do and what to do about it. Rachel Cruze. I could go on and on and on. Thanks for joining us today. It's just a pleasure to have you.
Absolutely, Brian. Thanks for having me on. It's so good to see you. I know we're talking, but I see you, which is so fun too.
No, it's great. It's great. Well, listen, I talked about I'll be coming out to see you folks in October and hanging out with all the Ramsey crew and your dad and everybody else. But, you know, I'm going to ask you a question. I want to dive in here. We've got a book buying audience that loves financial stuff, and I really think this is fresh. Know yourself, know your money. It's that understanding yourself and whatever else. I have a question that you can help me with, though, to start with.
I can't wait.
I got 6 kids. I built this big business and broadcasting and all over the world and real estate and all that kind of stuff. And yet I look at you and you've done phenomenal of being connected inside your dad's work life, inside the same space, and yet you're your own person with your own take on things, and yet you're still very connected to the dad's mission. He's larger than life, cast a giant shadow. How have you been able to navigate that?
How long do we have, Brian? How long do we have? No, I'm just kidding. No, I think for me, honestly, I'll say this first and foremost. I think if it was my mom, I think a daughter-to-mom relationship may have been tougher. Like I know father-son. So the fact that it's my dad and I'm a daughter, that dynamic already I feel like gives a lot of grace. And so for me, though, I had to push back early on when people would say, well, do you just want to be the next Dave Ramsey? Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking in my head, and then I just started vocalizing. I'm like, I mean, he's a bald 50-year-old man. Like, no, I don't want to be the next Dave Ramsey. And I'm like, no, that's not me at all. And he's kind of your fun Uncle Dave that'll give it to you like it is, the hard truth. That's why everyone loves him. And that's why he's honestly so successful and a great radio host because, man.
Don't be stupid.
That's right. That's right. But I'm like, I would never do that. I wouldn't go about it in that way in my personal life. Right. And so I'm like, and him always telling us, be who you are, no matter where you are. So I was like, I just need to get comfortable with Rachel Cruze. Like, who am I? And then let that show on my show, my podcast, my writing, just being myself. And so honestly, Brian, thankfully I was able to do that fairly early. Wasn't perfect at it, still not perfect at it, but early on in my career because now my career gives me, when I'm in this spot and I get to do this, I get energy from it because it's really just me versus trying to be someone else that I think can be really draining and exhausting. So I'm thankful for that and thankful that they kind of let me do my thing too. I get to still be Rachel and it's great. So
no, it is great. I've told Dave many times, he gets a lot of accolades. He's achieved so much and done so much and helped so many people. But at the end of the day, for me, I'm in the environment with a lot of guys that have failed at home and have won everywhere else. And, for you to be here today and your family and who you are and, the whole thing, it's a beautiful thing. It's as good a testimony to what your mom and dad think and believe and act and anything else. So enough of that. I just think that was cool. I appreciate it. It's great stuff. The book, let's dive right in. Know yourself, know your money. This is, in our dynamic at Buffini Company, we've coached hundreds of thousands of people, trained millions. We help them in their business. and then we help them with their finances and the rest of their lives. But who they are shows up, and who you are and how you interact. People have an emotional relationship with money and business and so on and so forth. And so you talk about two main fears, and fears we've always found in coaching people is the main driver that typically people have with money. One is the lack of security, and then the other is these external forces. I just think it's the heart of the matter. It shows up, and you really address it beautifully in the book. Can you talk on that for us from your perspective? Just how do people handle this? How do we combat the lack of security and those external forces?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, and fear is so interesting. And I interviewed Dr. Chip Dodd about this subject specifically because I wanted to hear what he had to say because he talks about fear a lot. And he actually said when we were talking on the phone, he said, Rachel, fear can actually be a gift. Fear is your body's response that you are in need of something. Now, when that goes to anxiety or it's paralyzing and you can't move and make decisions, obviously that's the bad fear. We don't want that to dictate your life. But when you have this initial knee-jerk fear, listen to that and actually say, okay, what's going on? And so I look back even on 2020. I wrote the book before the pandemic, which is funny. I was doing my editing during the pandemic. So there were a couple of things I was like, oh, I'm going to add this and this and this. Because, people will say, yeah, well, I have this fear that if I lose my job, we're not going to be okay financially because we don't have security. And I'm like, well, that's a legitimate fear. So what is that fear telling you? It's telling you that you're living paycheck to paycheck, that you don't have any savings, that you're dependent upon debt to live your life. So yeah, duh, like there's going to be a fear. So let's make that a tool and see that as a gift to do something different so that fear can be eliminated. And so pushing in that, but that security, man, that's a huge one. It used to be that was the top financial fear among women, the lack of security. And then I think really post-pandemic, it became everyone's fear. And so again, waking that up to say, what do I have to do different? What does it look like to not owe anyone anything? What does it look like to actually budget and be in control and know what I'm spending? Like these things help eliminate that fear. And then the external forces. Again, I hate to go back to 2020, but I'm like, this is exactly what happened, right? Like people, and I did for a season, you watch the news and you wring your hands about what they're going to do on the health side, what they're going to do on the financial side, what are they going to pass in Congress? And I got to this point where I just thought, I can't control that.
Right.
Like I'm sitting in Nashville, Tennessee. There's not much I can do about that. What can I do? Well, I can control my work ethic. I can control my attitude around things. I can control the people I'm actually surrounding myself with and who's speaking into my life. Like there are areas of our life that we have that somewhat control over.
Right. So
focusing on those things versus these external forces that it's like, you don't really have much control over those. Right. So when you sit there wringing your hands and put your energy towards that, it ends up, you get a net negative.
Or it's a great excuse, right? I mean,
yes,
it's a great,
yeah.
hey, the government did this and the government did that and the taxes are too high and the this and the that. I mean, I'm in California. You're in
oh, yeah.
Nashville, right? I got reasons. Now, here's the thing. I talked to somebody today and I said, yeah, you know what? I'm in California. I went outside this morning. It was 72 degrees. That's what I'm paying for. Here's the deal. This is the opportunity I have. And I'm not going to wait for the governor. I'm not going to wait for the taxes to change. I'm not waiting for anything. Let's go. I think you just said something that's huge here about how fear can be helpful. And I think people run away. It's like stress, right? You don't want too much stress in your life, but there are stressors that can help you. I just had a conversation this morning. 40-year-old guy, great dude, done a great job, loves his wife and his kids, faithful guy at work, but he finally had a wake-up call. He's like, oh my gosh, I don't have a retirement. Oh my gosh, my kids, they just entered high school and I don't have college education set aside. I've done all this work and I actually I told him you need to get this book because here's a guy that's a great guy. His dad was a pastor, so his dad lived like it was kind of like cleanliness is next to godliness. Some people think brokenness is right next to godliness.
That's right. That's right.
Let me show you how faithful I am by having the holes in my shoes. And I said to him, dude, you have a great opportunity here, and you're okay. You just recognize you've messed up, recognize it's time to take a different attack, and then learn everything you can. And I'm starting him on a kind of a diet, a regimen of things to listen to immerse himself in. And you say it in the book, you can't change what you don't know. And I just find like here's a great guy. He's a very, very smart individual. He does a wonderful job in his career, but he's totally ignorant about money. Here's what mom and dad did. Here's what I do.
Yes.
And he's living the same life as his mom and dad, who was a traveling pastor and they lived in a motorhome. And so
that's right.
what you can't change what you don't know. And I just think, what do you think in regards to people's financial literacy and immersing themselves in books and resources like this?
Well, I think it's huge. And I think for a couple of things. Number one, like what you just said, I'm like, yes. And it takes a level of humility to be able to say, I don't have it all.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people feel this need, whether you call it pride or, to survive. I mean, I don't know what it is, but it's just like, I got it. And asking for help, they feel like is weakness. But actually, when you say, I don't have it all, teach me, you actually are the one that gains stuff, right? I mean, you're the one that actually says, okay, I get new information. And so I think that is just, it's a character factor that is so needed in so many areas of our life. But I think part of that learning is to be able to say, yeah, I don't know it all, so I need to learn. And then pushing yourself to change. Because I think some people are at a really extreme place with their money where they say, oh my gosh, I only have 4 years left, or we have nothing in our savings, and they feel this urgency to change. And then other people don't. I mean, I talk to some people like, yeah, I mean, we have credit cards, like we have a little bit of savings. I don't know, like, yeah, we lease car, we kind of just do everything and we're fine. And I'm like, okay, then do what you want to do. I'm not going to obviously force you to change, but there's not enough pain in their situation.
Right.
To change. And I don't think pain has to be our only teacher, but I think it's very thorough. Like when you feel pain, you're like, okay, I will change something. And so there's an element to this change that is really difficult. So when you do learn something new, you're going to have to say, okay, I'm going to have to probably do something different. And change is uncomfortable. It's hard. We don't like it. We just want to keep doing what we know. I mean, even just a few weeks ago, I have 3 littles. So I have 3 little kids. I have a 6-year-old, an almost 4-year-old, and an 18-month-old. So I took out all the car seats the other day, and I cleaned out like our van, and I put in the wrong car seats. I switched the 2 on accident. So my 3-year-old goes to get in the car, and she's like, "No, Mom, this is my side of the van." I'm like, "Yeah, but your car seat's on this side." And Brian, you would have think I was like torturing her. It was this whole meltdown. It's that whole thing, and I'm like, "We're late. Please just sit in there." But it just reminded me, I'm like, she hates change. She knows her perspective, what she's comfortable with, what she likes. And I'm like, you could be 3, you could be 83. It's uncomfortable. So I just encourage people, when you learn something new and okay, that outcome is going to be better than my present, but it's going to force me to change what I've been doing. It's going to be uncomfortable, but push through that because you're going to get better. It's going to be better on the other side.
And you mentioned something that, as a business coach for people, it's hard to deal with, which is the person who's dancing on the edge of the cliff and doesn't know it. And experience is the cruelest of all teachers. That pain you're talking, it's a cruel teacher. And you don't have to subject yourself to that cruelty. You can be proactive and listen to the shows and listen to Dave Ramsey and Rachel Cruze and get coaching and get help and read the books and do all these things. Because a lot of people are just wandering through it. And also people make pain their comfort zone. I always think of the movie Shawshank Redemption and the librarian who's released and eventually ends his life because he was uncomfortable with freedom. And as some people, they get out of debt and they get right back in because that's their comfort zone. Or, hey, I got motivated years ago. I mean, I'm from the real estate business. People say, they used to train this. This was in the training of real estate when I first got in the business. Buy a car you can't afford. That'll motivate you to make your sales calls. And so okay, it could work, and you're 30 years of age, and it worked. Now people are 42, and they do that with a house. And now all of a sudden, oh my gosh, it's one thing to work your way out of a car. It's another thing to work yourself out of a house you can't pay for, and so on and so forth. And so that dynamic of learn, before the pain, be proactive, make it better for yourself. Now, I have this little weird side to me, Rachel. I won't endorse a book until I've read it. And I won't interview somebody. And you and I have both done the book tours and whatever else. And you're interviewed by somebody who doesn't have a freaking clue what you're talking about or the subject matter. And they don't have a notion. And so if we can go rapid fire through this, maybe in the next 5 or 7 minutes. So number 1, spender versus saver. Talk to us about the tendency.
Yes. So these tendencies, neither one is right or wrong. So as we go through these lists, there's not a right and a wrong. But the spender versus saver feels right or wrong in the financial world. People applaud the savers because they're responsible and great. And the spenders are like, oh, you're the irresponsible, immature person. But I'm a natural spender. That's my natural bent anyway. So I'm like, no, we can be spenders and be wise and have patience and all of that. But your natural knee-jerk reaction when you get money, whether it's a paycheck or a gift or whatever it is, do you just naturally tend to save it? You put it away, or do you just naturally spend it? And just to name that simple tendency, it is helpful when it comes to your money, just to know where you're at. So that one's a pretty self-explanatory
I
one.
got 6 kids. I got 3 natural spenders. I got 3 natural savers. I'm a natural saver. My bride's a natural spender. But I had a woman who mentored me years ago. She was an 80-year-old woman, and she said, Brian, spend money fearlessly for needed things. And I had realized at that point in time, I never enjoyed spending money. I just had an image, by the way, of you at a mall in Nashville, at a mall. That's Dave Ramsey's daughter. She's buying shoes.
I'm like, it's a debit card. It's a debit card.
That's got to be a lot of pressure. Okay, great next tendency. Nerd or free spirit?
Yeah, these are this is a Ramsey kind of coined phrase that we have. But when it comes specifically to the budget, I mean, other areas of money, but specifically the budget, the nerd is the detailed one. They usually enjoy being in control. They know what's going on. They love it. And then the free spirit is more, that everything's going to work out. It's going to be okay. So freaked out. So, and what's funny within marriage is usually opposites attract with the saver and spender, but also this nerd and free spirit. And it is, you usually know exactly who the nerd is if you're a nerd or a free spirit pretty off the bat.
The how-to on that, because I have my wife is big picture. Hey, God provides it all, isn't it great? and she doesn't spend $1 on herself. Like she does. I have to. Hey, honey, go buy yourself something. Come on, your closet's empty. You know that. So I have to push her to spend money on herself. She doesn't care what she drives or any of that stuff. We navigate it this way. My spender nerd side comes up with the outline. Like here's what we agree on, our values. We go off site once a year, then once a quarter we have a little redo, and then we do our budget. I've done this for 31 years. And I create the box. So I'm the nerd who creates the box. And then she can do anything she wants in that box.
I love that.
She can do anything she wants out. You don't have to talk to me. You don't have to send me a text. You don't tell me what you're doing. Now she does. Hey, is this a good decision or whatever else? And we're on the same page. But I go inside that box, and there's all kinds of wiggle rooms here and wiggle room there. And I think that's important. Lots of grace, and most people under budget. But for us, that's how the nerd and the free spirit coexist. And where money is a blessing to us and not a curse, we don't have. And when 31 years ago, our first discussions as husband and wife were edgy.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And until we came to this, hey, so that's just how we do it, and I've seen this played out. That's why I know this stuff is so true. I've seen it in my own life. Okay, experiences person or things person?
Yes. So when you do spend money, whether you're a saver or spender, do you tend to spend it on experiences? So vacation. I mean, this is me. So I will spend money on a great meal out or taking my kids to the zoo. Like I like an experience. Or actual items, things, where that's my husband. So his whole philosophy, he's like, if I'm going to work hard and make money, I'm going to buy something that's going to enhance my life, that I get to use it over and over. And, so whether we laugh, because even our Christmas lists, like when we talk about what do we want for Christmas? I mean, I'm like, give me a day at the spa. And he's like, I want Alexa light bulbs to screw in that I can light it up by asking Alexa. Like we're so, it's always things versus experiences. And I used to, as an experienced person, and we can do this with all the tendencies, but I would look at him, for instance, and I'm like, you're just no fun. Like, get a glass of wine at dinner. Like, let's just splurge. You're okay. Like, we can spend. And he's like, it's not that I'm a Debbie Downer. He's like, I just don't value it the way that you do, And I was like, oh. So it's like this, it's a total just different personality thing. But I think there's a level of respect you have, specifically when you're married, right? That your differences, you see, okay, there's strengths in both. But just knowing how you spend, because that's going to get into the budget conversation too, because the experienced person is going to want to up certain categories, or the things person is like, no, we need to make this purchase here, there, and all of that. Right. So just knowing it is helpful.
I think you'll enjoy this. One of the things we've figured out here, and it was interesting to see it written down this way, but in coaching people, one of the things we find is we can create enormous motivation for people if they set their goals around their tendency like this.
Yes.
So, for example, we had a woman, she's in the real estate business. She makes about $120,000 a year over year, 5, 6, 7 years in a row. And then all of a sudden her coach, she comes along, gets into coaching, we start working with her, and she's like, well, what motivates you? What inspires you? And she wanted to take her entire family, all of her relatives, and in 3 weeks to Disney. All expenses paid, Wow. It was 27 people. That year, that woman made $800,000 in commissions. Like she had 7 years of plodding along at the same, but launched to exponential execution was so diligent and disciplined in everything she did because the goal was, and that experience, she could see it. She had a picture of it. The coach had Disney stuff all over the place, and we're going to do this. And when they had private rooms, and she spent big dough on that trip. But you know what? She netted about $600,000 that year because of the daggone trip.
Because of it, yes. Isn't that interesting?
So in that case, spending the money, the vision of it, that experience, she wanted to have that one time in her life. And it was so real to her that it became the goal. And some people think, no, it's buy the house and get the car. And that can be a goal too. But for folks who are more experience-based, it can unleash. If you really go there emotionally and visualize it, boy, it can really make you disciplined. The next thing you know, you make a lot of money and do a lot of good things to go reach that goal. So again, I validate that tendency enormously. This is an interesting one. Quality person or quantity person. That was a kind of a new wrinkle for me. Tell me what you think about that.
Yes. So do you tend to, when you buy things, do you want usually less expensive, but options? So this is me, like my clothes or my, Brian, I love that. We're just chatting about clothes and earrings, but we're going to for a second. But I'm like, I don't need like super nice designer things. I'm like, I can go mid-level and just have different options. I like the variety versus quality, which again, we're opposite, my husband and I, but Winston he is quality. He's like, if I'm going to buy a nice pair of boots, I'm going to have 3 pairs and they're going to last me. And then be the best, the best leather, all this stuff. I'm like, just go get 5 pairs and just they can be cheaper, So it's just knowing how you spend. And again, all these tendencies, not one is not right or wrong, but the extremes of these can be. So for a quantity person, I have to filter through that. I can justify my purchases because they're more inexpensive. And so I did this a lot, like especially during quarantine times. I would get on Amazon and I would just be bored almost and just go spend, but I would justify it, be like, oh, it's just $20 or oh, it's $35. It's not a big deal. And I would just rack up, honestly, a bunch of crap that I really didn't need.
Right.
And I had to start asking myself, I was like, why am I doing this? I'm like, because I'm bored. And I thought, why am I okay not just being bored? Why do I feel the need to get this adrenaline pumping, the dopamine of spending money and, so the quantity is not bad, but we can justify our purchases to maybe put a Band-Aid over deeper things going on.
Yeah, and it's great. And I want to jump on one thing you keep saying, which is, hey, it's not right or wrong. A lot of times people say that as a soft soap, I don't want to make any waves. But in this regard, especially when you're talking about relationships, it's easy to think my way is the best. I mean, it's easy for me to, hey, I'm the saver, I'm the budget guy, I'm the provide for the family, and we have all the ducks in a row. It's easy. And the market will justify that. Hey, we became millionaires. Hey, we have no debt. Hey, and the market will justify that, and therefore it becomes my way is right and your way is wrong. And I think when you say it's not right or wrong, because at the end of the day, it's us, and how do we make it work? Because there's no point, I've said to people in marriage conferences I've spoken, there's no point being right and being alone. Congratulations, you're right and you're alone. From my bride and I have a completely, I'm white, she's black. I'm from Ireland, she's from the South, and, but we've made it work and become ours. And I think, when you keep saying it's not right or wrong, I think that's a profound point because we get so judgmental about it and we get so stuck on it, and then it causes a lot of division.
Yeah, because the truth is, Brian, too, again, these extremes is where it gets unhealthy and it gets wrong. And so the first one, saver versus spender. Again, I laugh because I'm like, the savers are always applauded in the financial world because a spender usually on the extreme side, they're the broke ones. They're the ones that literally spend everything they make. They cannot seem to save, and that's very irresponsible. But in the same regard, the legalism of a saver on the extreme side who holds money so tightly, it literally becomes another god to them. It becomes a security that is unhealthy, that if that foundation is ever shaken, they almost don't even know who they are. That there's a side of that too. So those extremes you definitely have to watch for. But the middle side of it where you're like, okay, we're kind of in the middle here. This is where I lean. It's so, I love it. I think it's so fun. It's always
a little bit of Switzerland, right? We got to find Switzerland.
That's right. We'll be a little neutral here.
Yeah, that's great. Safety person or status person? You kind of touched on this a second. Just talk about that.
So this question is, why do you want money? And for some people, they want it for just security reasons, right? I want to sleep at night. I want to know if something happens, we're going to be okay. Yeah. And then status sounds bad. I couldn't find another word, honestly. But this is not a bad thing. But status is more, I want money so I can enjoy life. I want money so we can go on a great vacation. I want money so we can buy a fun car. I want it to be able to do things. So this is, again, husband and I are so different. And when we talk about our end of the year goals, I love hearing what you and your wife do, because with Winston and I, we built a house and moved in the end of 2019. And I mean, for years, like that was our thing. Like we we were pushing for that. And then after it happened, it was like, what do we do? Like in 2020, obviously there was everything, or all the craziness happened, but it was like financially we thought, oh my gosh, this is like the first time we need a new goal. We hadn't had a new goal in a long time.
Right.
And so talking, and it was funny because Winston's goal was literally a number in the bank. He was like, I just want to play a game and get a number in the bank.
Yep.
And my follow-up question was, what are we going to do with that money? Like, if I know, because we're going to take a small percentage of it, and you and I are going to go on a fun week-long vacation without the kids, I'm like, I can get on board with that number. Like, if I know that there's going to be something coming out of it, it's great. So just knowing, again, your motivation on why you want money. Is it more for security purposes, or is it because you want to use it as a tool to go and do things?
Right. That accomplishment, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
like that. Last two, abundance person or scarcity person?
Yeah, kind of our classic. I feel like people talk about this a lot, but it's just true. I mean, do you see the glass half full? Do you think there's more opportunity, more options, more relationships, always more choices? You can always do more and figure something out on that abundance side. And that scarcity is definitely the closed fist, hold tight, and we're gonna be cautious with every decision.
And again, you say these are tendencies. You know, for me, look, I grew up in Ireland. We had a famine. The greatest poverty any culture can ever have is that you die of starvation. We had 8 million people, and then we had 3.5 million, right? So 1 million die, 1.5 million die starved, 1.5 million died trying to get somewhere, and 1.5 million made it to Australia and America and populated the rest of the world. So in our culture, there's a scarcity mentality. And then I came to the States and had this motorcycle accident, and I've got 250 grand in bills, and I'm 19 years old, and I'm a long way. So I was a scarcity person. That was my tendency. But I have, over the years now, become an abundance person. And that's what I want to encourage people is, this is true, but it's a tendency. And through discipline or foresight or awareness, you can grow. Now, when the pressure comes on, the scarcity flares up.
Right.
Right, the recession hits. Oh, my gosh. But you can, and you can be a spender who enjoys saving. You can be a nerd who gets a little free-spirited. And I think that's really one of the things you bring up. Last point of the 7 here is spontaneous giver or planned giver. This is a good one.
Yes. So when it comes to giving, which is a huge part, obviously, of our message, is to win with money so that you can help tons of people. But even in that, what does that look like for you? Does it look like just, you hear a cause and you're like, oh, okay, I'll do that. Or you give the $4 or the $1 at the grocery store checkout, for the local hospital. You're like, yes, you just kind of just give whenever it's asked, and you don't think much about it. Or are you more calculated? You are more thorough. You actually look into what you're giving to. You probably make I would say possibly even a bigger impact because you're strategic with it. There's thought behind it. But knowing those two is really important, again, in the marriage aspect too, just to know, hey, my spouse, here's my knee-jerk tendency. There can be a rub there.
Yeah, and again, Beverly and I, actually, we're going this evening for our annual off-site.
Oh,
and
nice.
One of the things we do, we have a foundation and so on and so forth, but we have our big planned giving, and then we establish a budget that has no names on it. And it's stuff that comes up, and she loves that. She really loves that. A circumstance comes up, this is going on, this person has this need, whatever else. And how you do it and without ruining yourself is we have a budget for it. And it's just set aside. We'll have the big plan giving stuff for the foundation. And then over here we have this other stuff, and it's here it goes. And so, I just love this. In my 31 years of marriage and finances and going from broke to not broke, I really know it to be true. And I know you got a great heritage there from your dad, but I really love your take on stuff, Rachel. I think it's great. I think it's neat. Your personality does shine through. It has that little different flavor than your pops, and there's principles that are in common, but there's applications that are different. And I think it's really, really cool. We've had every famous person you can imagine on this show, and I asked them 5 impromptu questions to finish.
Oh, I can't wait.
And so for the book purposes, go out and get the book. If you're talking about money, if you want to spend $20 or $25 and bless yourself and find out how to do it, go get it. I think it's great, and I think people will be blessed. Those 7 things will jump off the page for you. So here's a rapid fire question, Rachel. What's the best single piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh gosh. I mean, it's kind of the golden rule, but it's just true. Like, I mean, I think just treating others of how I want to be treated, and I do that, and with my kids, with my husband, with people I don't like necessarily. I think all of that. I think that there's a refreshing level of that I think is missing in this world. Just that level of respect to people.
Beautiful. What one talent or gift do you wish you possessed that you currently don't?
Oh, I'll say this, Brian. I wish I could sing.
Yeah, go on.
I look at people like doing arena concerts. I'm like, I could do that. I could totally do that. I just can't sing.
It's about, I'd say, sing or play music in front of a crowd is about 97% of the people I've asked. So when Mom was giving us those piano lessons and we blew them off and the singing lessons, everybody has that, it's the most common answer.
Oh,
That's
how
great.
funny. How funny.
That's great. What one book has been most instrumental in your life?
Oh, one book. I love to read. The one that I've loved the most, that I go back to probably the most recently, is Voice of the Heart. I mentioned Dr. Chip Dodd earlier in the show, but he walks through the 7 main emotions every human has, and the impaired side of each emotion and the gift side of each emotion, where we think there's like good emotions and bad emotions, where he actually shows you the things. But I mean, even simple things like anger is one, and there's always another emotion attached to anger.
Nice.
And so even like in my, in marriage or within other relationships, like, man, if I can just pinpoint and be able to verbalize what I'm feeling and understanding, it shows so much of my motivation and what's going on. So Voice of the Heart. I love it.
Voice of the Heart. That's a new one. I love it. Chip Dodd. Well, we'll probably have to get him on here. Okay. I don't know if you're much of a movie person, but if there's one movie you've watched over and over again, and every time it's on you kind of stop, what one would that be?
The one that came to my head because it just happened a few nights ago, so I'm laughing about it, and I guess this would be it, which is so quirky. Shooter, Mark Wahlberg. Have you seen that?
That's great.
It's always on TV, and I always want to watch it when I see it on like TNT, and I'm like, I want to sit here and watch it again. I love conspiracies. I love corruption. I love government stuff. All of that is my cup of tea. So maybe
there it is. That's great. Who knew? Mark Wahlberg. That's great. And then lastly, when I say the good life, what does the good life mean to you?
I mean, my family, my kids, husband pop in my head right now in this season of life. We took our 2 girls on vacation last week. We left the baby at home with the grandparents, which was actually brilliant. So we had the 2 girls, and it was the first time, Brian, as a mom, we had no strollers, no diapers, no cribs. And these 2 little girls, I mean, we played cards at night. We went to restaurants and actually ate, and they sat down in a seat. Like I'm tasting that part of parenting, and we had so much fun. It was honestly the most fun we've had with our kids on a trip. I was like, this is amazing. So yeah, the good life is that kind of thing. Like when I'm like when we're together, and half the time it's insane and it's crazy. I know. It's not always perfect. But when the times are just sweet and good, you're just like, man, God, this is it. Like this is the best. This is it. Yeah.
Well, as a father of 6 and my last 2, we are official empty nesters. I say soak it up. We enjoyed every bit of it. We didn't miss a thing. And it's great. I would say your next book that people would line up out the door is How to Do Both. You're doing a great job. You're doing an awesome job with Ramsey. You're doing a great job with your books, and you're really your calling here, and you're bringing your great slice to it. And we have a lot of mutual friends, and I know you're killing it as a mom and a wife, and you're doing great. And by the way, no one ever feels like they're killing it who actually is in the middle of it, right? All you feel is how I'm messing up my kids every day. You think about what you're not doing. I could be better at work. I could be better at home. And but I do think that might be your next bestseller, just so you know. So
Brian, I'm gonna stick that in my head. I really am. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You're
Thanks
doing
for
a great job. Well, it's a pleasure having you on here today. I know you're a blessing to a lot of people. I know a bunch of folks will be running out to get this, and they'll do well by it. It's great to see. I look forward to seeing you October when I head down to Nashville.
Yes, absolutely. Brian, thanks for having me on. Such an honor. I really appreciate it.
Great to see you. God bless. All right. Well, with that said, I'm going to finish up with a little Irish blessing here today from my mom, Therese, my little 90-year-old mom who told me how to not only know myself but know my money, and she's still doing it today. And so as we leave here today, I'll send you over to Therese Buffini for a little Irish blessing. We'll see you next time.
May the road rise up to meet you, and may the wind always be at your back. May the rain fall soft upon your fields, and the sun shine warm upon your face. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of his hand. See you next time.